Stephen, at the weekend, Mayo obliterated Galway 323 to 17 points. Now, going into this weekend, Mayo they'll host Tyrone, and Galway have they're going to be bringing Dublin to town. So obviously, you're looking at Kerry, Dublin, Galway, and Donegal all in with a chance to win the league title. Mayo they're on 5 points, Monaghan on 5 points. Obviously, don't want to get relegated. But just to look at Mayo's performance in Galway, it really was an annihilation. And why do you think that happened?
Well, Shane, it's very, very evident why it happened. Galway went into meltdown on their own kickouts. They put a serious press on the Galway kickout. I've always admired Mayo, particularly the way they press kickouts. You look at the likes of Killian O'Connor, he was kicking free kicks, and you look at him and you look at the way he reacts after the free. He's pointing, he's moving, he's telling people where to be. He's being really active. They're setting the tone. Their full forward line sets the tone for the press, Shane. And it's interesting. And this is not a new thing. If you'd watched Andy Moore in the past, go back 5-6 years when they were contesting All Ireland finals with Dublin, they were still doing this. They were the one team who really got after Dublin's kickouts at the time. And I think a lot of that, Shane, came from Donny Buckley's influence. I think Donny was a big believer in putting Cluxton under pressure, and really getting after Cluxton's kickouts. And I think, go back to last year as well, Donny's influence on Kerry as well. Obviously, he has left the setup now, but I would say his influence on that as well had a major factor in how they had pressed the kickout. But the press scene, if we look at the board, the Mayo press was interesting because Galway wanted to do this. Galway wanted to come in narrow into these areas here and break into these channels for a kickout. So they wanted to come in narrow and break. And the camera on TG Carr was brilliant, Shane, because the camera was behind the goal and you could see right down the field. And what Mayo simply done to combat this was Mayo just marked outside the zone. They just marked outside the zone. And when the Galway goalkeeper was signalling that he was going to go down the middle, one man just came into the middle, or six to sweep out the back. And it was very interesting. But it was this group of guys up here, the zonal bank of 6-7 players, maybe 8 at times, that pressed. And a couple of times what they done was they actually teased the Galway goalkeeper into giving the kick out into this area. And as soon as they did that, bang, in they went, and they sniffed it, and they went after it. And they turned Galway over on numerous occasions. They turned them over short, they turned them over middle, they turned them over long. And it was a joy to watch. It was actually a joy to watch. But then, Shane, on top of that, some of the new kids in the block for Mayo were absolutely outstanding. Young Conway was brilliant as well at corner forward. But listen, and their old campaigners, the likes of O'Shea, O'Connor, they stood up as well, and they were clinical. They were absolutely clinical. And at times, there was a little bit of frustration creeping in up front. You could see the forward looking the extra pass, maybe chasing the major, chasing the goal. But I thought they were doing the right thing, because what they were doing was they were keeping the scoreboard ticking over, and you could just see score after score was just absolutely demoralising Galway and ripping the heart out of them. But from a tactical point of view, Shane, I would have serious question marks over the Galway sideline at the weekend. I thought they were seriously naive. To let that unfold in front of your eyes, beggars belief. And people talking about Padraig Joyce and the new way he's brought the Galway and the new system, and it's given a great bounce. And it makes me chuckle because it's something similar there at the weekend, actually, even with Carlo. Carlo got a bit of a bounce at the weekend with a 2-17 to 2-15 win over Sligo. And I heard comments after from Niall Cruz saying that he felt that playing a certain style wouldn't get you success, but playing that way will certainly not get you success. If you're conceding 2-15, it's the same with Galway as well. Yes, we can talk about this beautiful football that they like to play and free flowing and open, but you'll be in the end of some serious beatings when you come up against teams who are really well organised and teams who can work you out, Shane. And I just think it's a naivety, and I think it's bound to maybe the public perception of how Galway should be playing. There's no identifiable way of how any county should be playing, Shane. You adapt to the teams that you're playing. You look at the opposition, you look at your own team, you look at your strengths, you tailor the system, you tailor the game plan. And every game plan and every game should be different. Your matchups will be different. Take Kerry at the weekend, for example. They didn't go after Monaghan's kickouts because they knew that that's one of Monaghan's main strengths. Everyone in the country knows that Rory Began can go right over the top of you into your 45 and cause you serious issues. So what did they do? They took that threat out. But standing on the sideline at the weekend, I was nearly shouting at the TV, Padraig, would you make a change? And all it took was for the Mayor Fonny or someone to go onto the field, tell the goalkeeper to go down injured, tell him to kill 2 minutes, game manage, look at the situation. Right, what can we do differently here? Okay, right, it's not working going long, so can we go short? Can we overload our full back line? Can we overload our half back line? Can we draw Mayo out a wee bit? Can we take a risk and dink one short? Try something. Try something. Can we overload one side of the field? And because Galway have some big athletic footballers. Now, on the flip side of it, they were very unlucky with injuries. They picked up a couple of early knocks. They had a couple of key men missing as well. Walsh missing, Comer missing. So on the reflection, it's probably very, very unfair to judge them on that. But it'll be interesting to see how they react at the weekend, Shane. It'll be interesting to see tactically how they approach Dublin. Because if they go in with the same approach against Dublin, there's only one winner at the weekend.
Ronan Steed was another massive loss from the middle of the field. I mean, he's the club player of the year from Corfin's All-Ireland 3 in a row. But a question I want to ask you about the kickouts and about Mayo's success there. You talked about the way they set up from the kickouts. Is that because, Rory Beggan could go along with Monaghan, so can he bypass everything Mayo were trying to do there in terms of that zonal thing, in terms of the forwards all pressing up, whereas Conor Gleeson in goals for Galway, so effectively what worked for Mayo there would that be their undoing against Monaghan, or would they have to set up differently?
Yeah, and it could be their undoing against Dublin as well. I feel, Shane, that Mayo had that much of a foothold in the game, and they had that much momentum. It was easy for them to go after every kick out. But in a 70-minute game, it is physically, I don't care what anyone says, it is physically and mentally impossible to chase down every single opposition kick out. So there's times in the game where you need to sort of take a foothold, take a rest in the game. For example, after you score a goal, if you hit a team in a counter-attack, and again, without changing the subject, we'll talk about it in a second, but Mayo again as well, with the likes of Paddy Durkin at wing back. I thought Paddy Durkin was outstanding in the weekend, and he kicked some brilliant points as well. And they're another team as well who have physicality, but they've got athleticism to hurt you from deep as well, Shane. But I think Mayo trusted themselves. Mayo are physically as good a team, and Shane, when you actually look at it, it's funny when you look at the big four, and you can who are the big four? Well, you're looking at probably Mayo, Kerry, Dublin, and you could argue Donegal, okay? And say you take that big four.
Not Tyrone, no.
Well, I'm not sure about Tyrone. I'm really not, and I mean that. And
Cork?
I've been out. Yeah, listen, Cork. But listen, we'll take Cork, right? We'll throw Cork into the mix as well, okay? But the point I'm making, and this will apply to Cork, specifically apply to Cork, the top teams all possess serious physicality and serious athleticism. Teams that aren't big, teams that aren't athletic, and teams that don't have that size won't count at the business end of the season. They won't count, and that's the problem. And I think that's where Tyrone just fall back that little bit. I just don't think they have that real dominance around the middle third. Losing Colin Cavanagh is massive, absolutely massive from point of view. And we went back in a couple of the clips we done at the weekend, and we talked about David Moore having the influence of those big players. A Brian Fenton in Dublin. Colin Nally talked to me at the weekend about how Fenton sort of cheats in games. He plays in the periphery of their defensive system. He nearly plays in the periphery of it. He doesn't do an awful lot of dogged stuff, but he sits waiting for the out ball, and he's nearly the go-to man. When they give him the ball, I wouldn't say he's lazy. Lazy's the wrong word, but he's cute. He's cute in the fact that he plays on the edges of the game, Shane, and he's their out ball, and he hurts teams, So come back to Mayo, and how would they press against Monaghan? Well, it'll be interesting to see what they would do if they come up against the Monaghan. And I suppose we've been very dismissive of Monaghan and Ulster because everyone's talking about Donegal and Tyrone and no one's talking about Monaghan. And if you looked at the side of the draw that Monaghan's in, they're probably on the perceived easier side. They play Cavan, and then the winners of Monaghan and Cavan play the winners of Down and Fermanagh. So you'd be looking at that thinking, would Monaghan fear Down or Fermanagh? Certainly not. And I'm sure Conor Lavery would love to do one over on his Isle County. But so I wouldn't rule Monaghan. I just wouldn't rule Monaghan out of the reckoning just yet. So you could get to a stage where Mayo do play Monaghan at some stage. But I'm not sure the draw, Shane. What is the draw? Do Ulster play Leinster or?
As far as I know, well, this has probably been a bit cheeky, but Dublin played the Ulster winners.
Dublin play the Ulster winners. Well, listen, look. If there's time to catch Dublin, it's maybe the semi-final, rather than the final. But no, listen, as I said, you go back to Mayo because we're going offline a wee bit there. But Mayo's press was brilliant. But the reason why Shane, I think, they trusted themselves in the press was because they have that physicality around the middle third. They back themselves to win those duels. They back themselves to win those battles where other teams wouldn't. And other teams, for example, take a Donegal, for example, if you have Ren McHugh planted at right half back for a kick-out press.
Yeah,
a really good goalkeeper could look at that and say we could expose him early. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting one.
And what about Aidan O'Shea? Is that going to work against Dublin this year? We could all see how he's gone to town on Sligo over the years, on Donegal in that quarter final in 2015, perhaps it was. He got the goals and he burst through men. We all know that he's physically really hard to stop and can be a massive threat. He had something like, I don't know, 6 frees won in the first half. He set up that goal for Paddy Durkin. He had a couple of points himself. They could not handle him whatsoever. Galway couldn't. Now, maybe Galway were naive in their setup, but the question I have is this going to work against Dublin? Is this going to work against Kerry?
Well, look, I went to watch a Sigerson game, Shane, years ago, and I think Aidan O'Shea at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, was playing for DCU or DIT or whoever it was. I can't remember at the time, but it was a Dublin University, and they were playing Jordanstown, and the game was played in Mayo Bridge on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday evening under the lights, and Mayo Bridge is only 5 minutes out the road for me, so I thought, well, look, here's an interesting one, a Sigerson game on your doorstep, I'll go and watch this. And Aidan O'Shea was playing, and I remember looking at him, Shane, thinking, that lad has everything. That lad is everything, but he could do a lot more. And I always felt that, Shane, about Aidan, a brilliant footballer. He has got all the attributes. He's got the physicality, he's got the size, he's got the hands, he's got the skill. And for a big man, he's bloody skillful. And when you think of it, and I suppose without being too hard on him, if you think of the roles that Mayo have played him in, go back to actually when they played Kerry, they put him on Kieran Donaghy at full back. So Aidan O'Shea has been pulled about everywhere. He's played at 15 and come out. He's played at 11. He's played at 14. He's played at 8. He's even played at 3. So it's probably unfair. And I think Mayo people sometimes, I think, are unfair on him. I think sometimes they look at him and they're expecting a lot more from him and they're expecting big things from him. But because he's a big man, he's also targeted in games, Shane. People used to say, I think it came from the Kerry camp, Darragh O'Shea at the time, you hammer the hammer. You look at the opposition and you hammer the hammer, and that's Aidan O'Shea. Opposition will look at him, they'll think he's big, he's soft, get into him. And it's probably unfair because he is targeted at times. He does get a lot of abuse. He does bring a lot of fouls on himself, which ends in scores for Mayo as well, which maybe he doesn't get full credit for. I think Aidan's a top footballer. I really do. But I understand what you're saying. I would love to see Aidan O'Shea produce it in Croke Park when it really matters on the big day and everyone going away saying, geez, Aidan O'Shea turned that game on its head. Because we went back to the kid at the start of the show where we talked about Clifford. Clifford will do that. Mannion will do that. Dean Rock will do it at times. So you want to see him up there with those names. You want to see people talking about him. And if you're going back to what you asked me about Dublin and how they would approach that, you know exactly how they would approach that. They would have a man behind and a man in front, and any ball that went in high would be broken and it would be swallowed up. There's no question about it, and they wouldn't be giving them, plus as well out the field, they probably wouldn't be giving them the time and the space to deliver that sort of a quality ball into them either. So the players out the field will be put under a bit more pressure, because at the weekend, Shane, I personally, I think this is the best way to describe it in the weekend's game. I don't think Galway are that bad, and I don't think Mayo are that good.
Yeah, this is the question I was going to ask you. I mean, have Mayo and James Horan found the players coming through? Oisin Mullen looked good at wing back. Owen McLaughlin looked well at like wing back, which actually led to Lee Keegan being positioned at number 4. Mark Moran got man of the match, scored 1-2 from centre forward, and Tommy Conroy was good at corner forward. So they haven't found enough as far as you're concerned to win an All-Ireland?
It's too early, Shane. It's too early to win the All-Ireland. It really is. It's too early for them. But I do think that they have brought in some brilliant young footballers. I go back to their All-Ireland under 21 team of last year. I know Kildare won. I think Kildare beat them in the final at the time. But a friend of mine from Newry here, his cousin was actually playing in the team, and we had gone to watch the game. And I could see there was some seriously great young talent coming through in Mayo. And I think that it's time. Horan has probably realised that it's time now to blood this young talent, because the crew from previous years have had their chance. How many chances did they need? How many chances? And there's only a certain amount of time, Shane, that group could have went to the well. And I think it got to the stage where I don't even think, Shane, it was a physical thing. I think mentally that group were broken. I think mentally a lot of them were broken. And bringing in those young lads and bringing in those fresh faces, what it might do is it might actually give the likes of Aidan O'Shea and Paddy Durkin and these boys who have been around the block a long time, it might give them a new sense of purpose, a new freshness, to see these faces in the teams and to see these faces in the starting team. So, yeah, listen, it'll definitely improve them. Is there anything to worry about in Connacht? Everyone's talking about Mayo and Galway. For me, Roscommon are the big danger. And for me, Roscommon are the biggest threat to Mayo progressing in the All-Ireland, and not Galway.